I thought I knew my life so well. Everything seemed to be falling into place. Jake and I had been married for 5 years. On the surface, things were perfect. He was successful, kind, loyal, everything I'd ever wanted in a partner. But somewhere beneath all of that, something was quietly slipping away. I felt like I was losing myself, and I didn't even know when it started. I didn't know why, but I began to feel disconnected, like I was fading into the background of my own life. It wasn't that Jake was doing anything wrong. He was still the same. Loving, supportive, and he worked hard for our future. But something was missing for me. The excitement had started to wear off. The routine, the quiet evenings, the predictable weekends, they were comforting, but they also felt like a kind of cage. I started to wonder if I'd ever truly felt free. But the problem was that I didn't tell Jake any of this. I thought it was just a phase, that maybe I was just tired. Everyone goes through that, right? I kept pushing those feelings down, trying to ignore the gnawing emptiness. I didn't want to sound ungrateful or, worse, crazy. I had everything a woman could ask for. I thought I should be content. It wasn't until I met someone else that I truly realized how lost I'd become. It wasn't supposed to happen. It wasn't like I went out looking for it. The first time I met him, I didn't even think twice. His name was Brad. He was a friend of a friend at a party we went to. At first, it was nothing, just small talk. But there was something in the way he listened to me, like I wasn't just another wife at a party. He was genuinely interested, and that caught me off guard. I didn't even know how to respond, because I hadn't had a conversation like that in what felt like years. Jake was there too, of course, but he was talking to other people. He wasn't paying attention to me. I felt invisible, and that made me open. I remember Brad complimenting me on my dress and how it made me feel like I actually mattered. I hadn't felt that in so long. It wasn't even the compliment. It was the attention, the recognition. I didn't need to be the perfect wife at that moment. I could just be me. Flawed, real, and human. We talked for hours that night, mostly about work and the usual small talk. But there was something different in the way we communicated. It felt refreshing. When we said goodbye, Brad gave me a hug. A real hug, not one of those half-hearted ones you give to acquaintances. It felt comforting, like he wanted to understand me without judgment. The next few days, I couldn't stop thinking about him. It wasn't like I was in love, but there was a spark. A connection I hadn't felt in years. I kept telling myself it was just a moment, a fleeting thing. But my mind kept wandering back to him, back to the way he made me feel seen. A week later, we ran into each other again. And again, it was like a little light in a dark room. That feeling of being heard, understood. I didn't want it to go away. It was stupid. I knew it. I felt guilty about the attention I was getting from someone else when I was married to Jake. But I couldn't help it. The more I saw Brad, the more I realized how much I missed that feeling of excitement, of something new. It was like a drug. One night, after a few more casual meet-ups, I found myself making an excuse to go out for drinks with Brad. I knew it was crossing a line, but I didn't want to feel like I was suffocating anymore. When he kissed me, it was like an electric shock. It was wrong, I knew that, but in that moment, I didn't care. All of the fears and doubts I had about my own life faded away. For once, I didn't feel like I was losing myself. But the truth is, I was. I was losing who I was, and I didn't even know how to stop. As much as I tried to convince myself that it didn't mean anything, I couldn't deny the guilt that came with it. I started lying to Jake more and more, pretending everything was fine, while I was living in this secret world. I didn't know how to explain any of it. How could I? I loved Jake, but I was becoming someone else. Someone I didn't recognize, and that scared me. But the more time I spent with Brad, the more I felt like I was becoming a different person. I didn't know who I was anymore, and that scared me more than anything else. And yet, I couldn't stop myself. The rush was addicting. The worst part was, I didn't want to hurt Jake. But I couldn't tell him. Not yet. Not until I understood it all. But maybe deep down, I already knew that once I told him, it would all come crashing down. After that night with Brad, I felt both alive and sick at the same time. It was this strange mix of excitement and guilt that followed me everywhere I went. I couldn't stop replaying what happened in my head, and yet, every time I looked at Jake, I felt like I was carrying a secret too heavy to hide. I thought he could see it on my face, that somehow he'd just know. But he didn't. He smiled like always, kissed me goodnight, asked me about my day. It was so normal that it almost hurt. Because I wasn't normal anymore. I'd done something that couldn't be undone. At first, I tried to justify it to myself. I told myself it was just a moment of weakness, that it didn't change how I felt about Jake. It didn't mean anything. I whispered to myself one night in the bathroom, staring into the mirror like it could forgive me. You're just lost. You'll figure it out. But that wasn't true. Because when Brad texted me again a few days later, my heart skipped a beat. I should have deleted his message right away, but instead, I smiled. I wanted to feel that rush again. The thrill of being wanted, the feeling of someone choosing me for me. Our conversations grew longer. At first, it was small talk, but then it became deeper. He asked me about my dreams, my frustrations, my fears, the kind of questions Jake hadn't asked in years, and I realized how much I missed being truly seen. One night, Jake and I were watching TV. I was sitting beside him, pretending to pay attention, but my phone was in my hand, lighting up with messages from Brad. My fingers hovered over the keyboard as Jake laughed at something on the screen. I looked at him and felt this stabbing pain in my chest. I loved him. I really did. But there was a wall between us now. One that I had built. Everything okay? Jake asked, glancing over at me. Yeah, I said quickly, forcing a smile. Just work stuff. He nodded, trusting me. That trust broke me a little inside. Because he had no reason to doubt me. He still believed in us. And there I was, living a double life. I started going out more, using excuses like girls' nights or late meetings. It was easy, too easy. Brad and I met at quiet bars or took walks in places we knew we wouldn't be recognized. Every time I told another lie, it felt like I was digging myself deeper, but I couldn't stop. There was something intoxicating about being with him. The way he looked at me, the way he made me laugh like I hadn't in years. One night, I asked him, "Do you ever feel guilty about this?" He shrugged, looking at me with that half-smile that made my heart race. Yeah, sometimes. But then I look at you, and I think maybe we both just needed something real. Something real. That word echoed in my head. Was what we had not real? Was my marriage not real? I didn't know anymore. I only knew that when I was with Brad, I didn't feel like the wife who'd been quietly fading away. I felt like me again. Messy, complicated, alive. But the guilt followed me home every time. It crept into the silence between Jake and me, into the empty spaces in our conversations. He started to notice I was distant. Hey, he said one night while we were eating dinner. You've been quiet lately. Everything okay at work? Yeah, it's just a lot going on, I said, staring down at my plate. He nodded, but I could tell he didn't believe me. You know you can talk to me about anything, right? I know, I said, forcing a smile that didn't reach my eyes. I'm just tired. And he let it go. Because that's who Jake was. Patient, understanding. The kind of man who didn't push. And that made it worse. I almost wanted him to yell, to question me, to demand answers. Because then I wouldn't feel like I was betraying someone so good, so undeserving of this. But instead, he kissed my forehead and said softly, "I love you." And I wanted to cry, because I didn't deserve those words anymore. The next few weeks were a blur. I was living between two worlds. One filled with comfort and routine, the other with chaos and passion. The contrast was dizzying. With Jake, everything was safe, predictable. But with Brad, it was like walking on a tightrope. Dangerous, thrilling, alive. Sometimes, lying next to Jake at night, I'd look at him and wonder how I got here. How did we go from being inseparable to strangers under the same roof? Maybe it wasn't about Brad at all. Maybe it was about me. About the woman I'd become, or maybe the woman I was afraid to become. Brad made me feel like I still had choices. Like I could still be someone other than Jake's wife. But every time I saw Jake's face, every time he asked if I was okay, I felt like a terrible person. I wanted to tell him everything, to confess, to start over. But then I'd imagine the look in his eyes, the hurt, the betrayal, and I couldn't do it. I wasn't ready to face that kind of destruction. So, I kept pretending. Smiling, laughing when I needed to, making love to a man I loved while thinking about another one. It sounds cruel when I say it now, but at the time, I was just trying to survive the emptiness I'd created. I told myself it was temporary. That I'd stop, that I'd fix it before it went too far. But deep down, I think I already knew it had gone too far. Because when you start living a lie, it stops being something you can control. It starts controlling you. I didn't think I could keep it up forever. The lies were piling up, and the guilt was starting to wear me down. Every time I looked at Jake, I felt this crushing weight in my chest. He still had no idea. No idea what I was doing, what I was feeling. And I couldn't keep pretending that everything was fine. But every time I thought about telling him the truth, I froze. The consequences were too big. How could I tell him? How could I destroy everything we'd built? I couldn't even imagine what it would do to him. It was a Saturday morning when the truth finally started to creep in. Jake and I were in the kitchen, making breakfast like we did every weekend. He was humming along to some old song on the radio, flipping pancakes, and I was trying not to look at him. Trying not to think about the mess I'd made. So, he said casually, I've been thinking maybe we should take a trip soon. Just the two of us. We haven't done anything like that in a while. His words hit me like a punch in the stomach. A trip. He was talking about us. About our future. And here I was, living in a completely different reality. I nodded, forcing a smile. That sounds great, babe, I said. I'd love that. But inside, my mind was racing. How could I go on a trip with him when I was carrying this huge secret? How could I pretend everything was fine when I knew I was falling apart inside? Later that day, I found myself staring at my phone, debating whether to text Brad or not. I hadn't seen him in a few days, but I still felt that pull. I wanted to talk to him, hear his voice, feel that rush of excitement. I was so caught up in the moment, in the fantasy of it all, that I didn't even realize I was ignoring Jake. He found me in the living room, sitting on the couch, scrolling through my phone. Who are you texting? Jake asked, leaning against the doorframe. I froze. It wasn't like I could hide it. My fingers were literally hovering over Brad's name. But I didn't want to admit it. I didn't want to have to explain myself. Oh, just a friend, I said quickly, shoving the phone down into the couch cushions. Nothing important. Jake's eyes narrowed, and I could tell he didn't believe me. But he didn't press it. Instead, he just sighed and sat next to me. You've been distant lately? He said softly, looking at me with that concerned expression. I don't know what's going on, but I feel like I'm losing you. I swallowed hard, my throat tight. I felt like I was suffocating. The guilt was overwhelming. And at that moment, I realized I couldn't keep living this lie. Not anymore. I'm sorry, Jake, I whispered, the words barely escaping my lips. I've been doing something I shouldn't. And I've been lying to you. I don't know why. I don't know how it got this far. Jake's face went pale. I could see the shock in his eyes, the hurt. He looked at me like I had just slapped him in the face. What are you talking about? He asked, his voice shaking. What have you been doing? I couldn't answer. My mouth felt dry. I didn't know where to start, how to explain it. There were no words that could make this better. I'm so sorry. I whispered again, tears welling up in my eyes. I've been seeing someone else. I didn't mean for it to happen, but I don't know what to do. Jake's face twisted with pain. I'd never seen him look at me like that. He stood up. His hands clenched into fists, and he turned away from me. You've been seeing someone else. He repeated, his voice hoarse. For how long? I didn't mean for it to happen, I pleaded, standing up to face him. I was just so lost. I felt like I was disappearing, like I didn't even know who I was anymore. And then, Brad came into my life, and he made me feel seen. He made me feel alive. I never wanted to hurt you, Jake. I swear I didn't. He didn't respond. Instead, he just stared at the wall, like he was processing everything in his head. And I hated myself for doing this to him. I wanted to take it all back, but I couldn't. I don't know what to say to you right now, Jake said quietly, finally turning around to look at me. His face was pale, his eyes red, and I could see the pain behind them. I trusted you. I believed in us. I never wanted to betray your trust. I whispered, choking on my words. I don't know what happened to me, Jake. I don't know how I let it go this far. You've been lying to me for months, he said, his voice flat, almost robotic. And now you expect me to just, what? Forgive you? I don't know what I expect, I said, tears streaming down my face. I don't know how to fix this. I don't even know if I can fix this. But I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry I hurt you. He didn't say anything for a long time. It was the longest silence I'd ever felt. It was as if everything we'd built together was slipping through my fingers, and I couldn't stop it. Finally, he shook his head and said, I don't know if I can keep going like this, Emma. I just don't know if I can trust you again. And that was it. The moment I had feared for so long had arrived. The truth was out, and I had no idea where to go from here. The silence after Jake's words was deafening. I could hear the thumping of my own heart in my ears, as though my entire world had just shifted on its axis. He didn't hate me. At least, not yet. But I could feel it in the air between us. The trust that had once been unshakable was gone, like it had crumbled away in an instant. I don't know how long we stood there, not saying anything. It felt like time had frozen. I just kept staring at Jake, waiting for him to say something more, waiting for him to tell me what to do next. But there was nothing. Only the heavy weight of regret hanging over us. Finally, Jake spoke, his voice softer this time. I don't even know what to say, Emma. I don't know how I'm supposed to move forward from this. I wiped my eyes, trying to stop the tears that wouldn't stop falling. I never wanted to hurt you, Jake. You have to believe that. I do believe you, he said. But it didn't sound like he did. I can't understand why. Why you didn't come to me? Why you couldn't talk to me before all of this happened? Why you let it happen? The frustration in his voice was painful to hear, but it was nothing compared to the guilt that was eating me alive inside. I was scared, Jake. I whispered. I didn't know how to tell you. I didn't know how to admit that I wasn't happy, that I wasn't myself anymore. And then, I made a mistake. I let it get too far. You think? He asked bitterly. You think this is just a mistake? You've been lying to me for months, Emma. Months. And you think that's just something I can forgive? Something that's just going to go away? I don't know. I said quietly, my voice barely audible. I don't know what's going to happen, but I need you to know that I love you, and I'm so sorry. I never wanted to hurt you. He rubbed his face with his hands, trying to gather his thoughts. I could see him struggling to hold himself together, and it made everything feel so much worse. He was hurting, and I had caused it. What happens now? He asked finally, his voice cracked. I don't know, I said, feeling hopeless. I don't know what to do. I'm so lost right now. Jake. I could see him shutting down, pulling away from me emotionally. Yeah, I think we both are. That was when the reality hit me. The truth had shattered everything between us. I had broken our foundation, and I didn't know how to put it back together. I don't want to lose you, I whispered, reaching for his hand. I don't want this to be the end. But he didn't take my hand. He looked at me with such sadness in his eyes, and I could tell he was trying to figure out if he could ever trust me again, if we could ever get back to where we were. I don't know if I can get over this, Emma, he said softly. I don't know if I can ever trust you the same way. The words hit me like a ton of bricks. Jake, please, I know I messed up. I know I betrayed you, but I need you to believe me when I say I never meant for any of this to happen. I don't know what's wrong with me, but I want to fix this. I want to work through it. Do you? He asked, his voice tinged with anger and hurt. Do you really? Or do you just not want to lose the life we had, the comfort, the safety? That question stung because deep down, I knew he had a point. Had I been selfish? Had I been so desperate to feel something that I didn't even stop to think about the consequences? Did I want to fix things because I loved him, or because I was scared of losing everything I had? I love you, Jake, I said, my voice trembling. I swear I do. But I don't know how to fix this. I don't even know where to start. He exhaled sharply and stood up, pacing back and forth in the living room. I could tell he was still trying to process everything. His mind was racing, and I couldn't blame him for that. I don't know if I can look at you the same way again, he said, almost to himself. I wanted to reach out to him, to hold him, to make everything better. But I knew I couldn't. I had destroyed that sense of safety, that trust. And now it was too late. Jake, please? I begged, tears streaming down my face. You're everything to me. I know I messed up. I'm not asking for forgiveness right now, but please, can we try to figure this out? I don't want to lose you. He stopped pacing and looked at me. I don't know if I can do this, he said quietly. I don't know if I can just pretend like everything's okay. Because right now, nothing feels okay. And that was it. The words that I had been dreading to hear. Nothing feels okay. I don't want to pretend, I said, barely able to speak through the tears. I don't want to lie anymore. But I don't know how to make this right. Jake didn't say anything. He just walked over to the window and stared outside, his back to me. And in that moment, I felt more alone than I had ever felt in my life. Everything had changed. Nothing would ever be the same again. And I wasn't sure if we could ever come back from this.